Earlier this year, the national think tank Good Jobs First issued a nationwide report evaluating the transparency among states regarding the costs and benefits of their tax incentives. New Mexico came in near the bottom. The film tax credit, high-wage jobs tax credit, manufacturers investment tax credit, and the technology jobs tax credit all got a 0 score for not providing enough public information. Of a possible score of 100 on transparency, New Mexico got only a 7. I sat down with the report author, as well as a legislator and a tax expert, to talk about why the state's incentives remain so mysterious. I'm here with State Senator Tim Keller of Albuquerque, Richard Anklem, President and Executive Director of the New Mexico Tax Research Institute, and Greg Leroy. He is Executive Director of Good Jobs First in Washington, D.C. Thank you all for being here. Greg, thank you for coming to New Mexico. It's not your first time here, but it's good, always good to have you back to check up on these things. Quick question. You guys have a new study out called Show Us the Subsidized Jobs, an evaluation of state government online disclosure of economic development subsidy awards and outcomes. Long way of saying we could be doing better about transparency in things when it comes to this, couldn't we, nationwide? What's going on out there?
Yeah, you barely avoided a goose egg on our 100-point scale. You came in tied for 45th. Only four of the 5 programs that we graded in New Mexico, major economic development incentive programs, are not disclosed online. Taxpayers cannot see costs and benefits. Only one of your major training programs is disclosed and only sort of disclosed. So you got a lot of room for improvement. 47 states overall nationwide now do disclose, and most of them quite a bit better than New Mexico.
What is with the trend on this here? What's going on? What's the impetus to why we need to have this information? Why is it good for the taxpayer? Why is it good for our economy overall?
The trend is positive. In 2007, only 23 states disclosed. By 2010, before our second report card, we were up to 37 states plus the District of Columbia, and today it's 47 and counting. And I think there's a lot of reasons why it's happening. The recession certainly had a lot to do with it, because it was a time when many governments, including yours, were making a lot of painful budget decisions. And people felt like this economic development spending was not nearly as visible as some other forms of spending that were being cut. You know, education, infrastructure, training, things that also affect economic development a lot were getting hurt at a time when people couldn't really see the bottom of the iceberg, so to speak, including the tax spending, especially for economic development. So I think a lot of people said, we want a fuller understanding of everything the state's doing so we can get our arms around it and make sure we're making the right decisions.
Makes sense. It's logical. It seems logical, Senator Keller. I mean, who could be opposed to this? However, you have had bills in our legislature for 3 years running now, or 2 years running at least, that have not passed to, in fact, give the citizenry some idea of what's being spent where and what the results are, especially. Why can't we get something like this done in the legislature? What's the block there?
Well, at the end of the day, you know, this is a fascinating story because this movement really has been bipartisan from day one. And so we've had a tax expenditure budget bill vetoed by Governor Richardson and then vetoed twice by Governor Martinez, and that's despite bipartisan sponsorship and passage. So the issue really that is always used as one of two things. We don't have enough staff to do it, which frankly, really, I just don't think is the case. It takes about half an FTE to do something like this, but that's used a lot. But really what this is about is branch power between the branches of government. So a executive branch does not want to be beholden to the legislature or any other branch to share this information and to have these programs evaluated. So basically we've seen 2 governors now veto any legislation around this. I think really just to be able to protect the programs that are in place, whether they're good or bad is a separate question.
Interesting. Let me read you a quote from the governor's response, not this past session, but the session before that when she did in fact veto this bill. She said, in quote, although taxpayer names, addresses, and IDs are specifically excluded in the bill, in instances in which one large firm dominates an industry or region, it can be fairly easy to determine the identity of a taxpayer from information about a tax expenditure. Basically, and it goes on a bit from that, but basically, if I'm gleaning this correctly, that it assumes there's some danger to the recipient of these things if folks in fact do know who they are. Am I reading that correctly? Is there some other side to this that folks may not be realizing about having these kind of things under wraps?
It has definitely been a rationale, and we see that in the veto message. But at the end of the day, I think what the public and the legislature now several times over has said, if you're going to get hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars, the public has a right to know, because it's their tax dollars, you know, what you're doing with them and what jobs are created. So I think publicly it's a reasonable trade-off. However, we do see an argument from the business community that that's confidential information.
Right.
And so there is a little bit of a rub there, but I think in other states this really has never even been an issue.
Sure, I want to come back to some specific ideas about the film tax credit and other JTIP and other things in a quick second. Richard, good to see you. Thank you for coming back. Less of facial hair since the last time you were here, but that's okay. You're allowed.
Saved away the gray.
There you go. Where do we stand on this idea of taxes? This seems to be the conversation in New Mexico when it comes to economic development is taxes. And our tax structure, we have an administration, we have many administrations now in a row who do taxes as a means of economic development. Give us the overall sense of where taxes in our argument is now here in New Mexico.
Well, I think, you know, taxes are one of the things that the legislature can control
Yeah.
and the governor can influence. So it's always a topic of conversation. Obviously, there are taxpayers out there, so they have a wedded interest to the
There you go.
subject. Taxes, particularly in bad economic times, become an issue because you're making the tough economic choices, and at the same time, you desperately want jobs. So it's a natural conversation to have. Taxes don't drive all investment decisions, but that's not to say that they don't impact investment decisions. It depends.
Let me stop you there. That's the crux of the argument for many people. What, in fact, do tax incentives either do or do not do? Where do we stand now, in your opinion, on this whole idea? It's a big, broad subject, certainly. Are we showing some results anecdotally that makes you comfortable where we are in our tax structure, or is there something left to be done here, in your view?
I think there's a lot to be done. You know, you tax what you have, and our tax structure, particularly the gross receipts tax, was designed in an economy that was fundamentally oil and gas and federal government. And oil and gas is not a permanent fixture. It's had a resurgence, but it's a finite resource. On the other side of the coin, the federal government, we don't have Domenici and Bingaman anymore. Earmarking is kind of a thing of the past, and the federal budget's probably not a growth industry. So now the desperation is, why haven't we grown our private sector? And in this modern day, our structure, particularly the gross receipts tax, isn't overly conducive to that. Now, that said, some of the recent policy changes have been fairly targeted to reduce the tax burden on certain kinds of investments, particularly in manufacturing, and I think they've successfully accomplished that. Whether that means we have a million jobs tomorrow, unlikely, you know, but it doesn't hurt. But again, it's not the only driver of decision making. If you need a deep water port, New Mexico's not on anyone's list, and you can't fix that with taxes. So at the same time, it's kind of like going to an auction. You know, you can pay you can get a great deal, or you can get a bad deal. You can spend $1,000 for a $500 object.
I love the analogy there, and let me go back to Greg for a second on that, because there's almost a fever pitch that happens when economic development, as we sit here, for example, taping this, Tesla is yet to make its decision on the 4 states that are up for grabs about where they're going to make their mega, super, giga, giant factory. This is a classic example about being either competitive, because of what we see other states either doing or not doing, and then there's like a fevered pitch to come up with something that's going to be the ultimate package, and then we all back up afterwards like, wait, we gave the house away. What happened here? How should we enter these kind of negotiations so we don't give the house away? Do they work?
Well, a couple things. The Tesla auction that's going on right now is a public auction. And that's not typical. Only Boeing has been a multiple conductor of public auctions. Usually these are done quietly. Consultants are hired. Sometimes the identity of the company is not even named at first. The fact that Tesla is conducting this auction is an opportunity, frankly, for more public engagement in the debate around what the deal should be. And what lessons will New Mexico draw from Intel, from SCHOTT Schoeller, from Philips Semiconductor, from Mesa del Sol. You've had some debates, you've had some shortfalls and some disappointments, and the question is, how do you compost that experience and draw a smart deal? I mean, I think the state should compete for Tesla, but the other thing to say is that, you know, we know now from these multi-state competitions that Tesla may have already made its mind up. It may be using 3 states as straw men to up the ante with the state that it chose ahead of time.
I think I'm with you on that.
And we have no way to know. At the end of the day, because of the way site location has evolved in America over 80 years, the corporate decision-making process remains a black box. You and I will never know for sure. We're forced to take their public statements at face value.
That's right.
And we can't know if the state, any of the other 3 states, are being jerked around to up the ante.
Sure, which brings us back to where we sit here in New Mexico. One of the, you know, we talked about goose eggs and how we've come up short in a lot of different things. Let's talk about the one thing where we do have some reporting, the JTIP program. One of the things that I hear a lot about the JTIP program and people get excited about is there's a demonstrable result with JTIP. People can look at it and go, okay, that number of jobs came from this amount of money, but we don't have that luxury with the other 4 categories, do we? We don't know where these what's happening here.
Yeah, you don't know outcomes. You don't at all. You don't know cost per job. You don't know how many jobs the company created versus how many it was supposedly
Why is that
obligated to
important
create.
to have that? I guess that's the fundamental question again. And how do we get pressure to have that, in fact, happen for the taxpayer?
Well, so you've got another shortfall now with the Shot Solar deal. I think anytime you, and potential layoffs coming at Intel, right? Another big subsidy recipient in the past. I think every time that happens, people should say, well, wait a minute. The solution for that is taxpayer transparency on costs and benefits and reasonable taxpayer safeguards in the form of clawbacks, that is money-back guarantee language, or rescissions or recalibrations, rewriting the terms of the deal to reflect costs and benefits. But if taxpayers can't see costs and benefits online, then reasonable people cannot have an informed debate. I mean, reasonable people may disagree about the value of programs, but if we all can't really see what went in and what comes out, then we're all in the dark.
That's right. Senator, go ahead.
Yeah, and even why this is so important is because these add up. And so at the end of the day, when we look at our tax policy, it looks like a piece of Swiss cheese, which is an analogy that's often used, but so true. And we know from estimates that the holes in the cheese are about 20%.
Wow.
So when you add that up, it's about $1 billion a year that we give away to one program or another. And we have no idea whether they're good and should be enhanced, or whether they're redundant and obsolete and could essentially be returned to the taxpayers or put back into the general fund for education. So that's why I think when you look at it in its totality in New Mexico, we are essentially paying 20% more taxes to cover all these different programs.
Fundamentally, are our hands tied here? Do we have to do this to be competitive, given our situation? Do we have to give it away a little bit more than other places? And is that okay at the end of the day? Is that just our way to be competitive in a competitive landscape?
Well, we are in a situation where in America, with the sort of federal state system, the states are being played off each other. And so that is a game that's being played nationwide. And if we opt out, we are opting out of the entire game. The key is, I think, which Greg mentioned, is to play it right and to make sure that we're getting the highest return on our investment. And that's what some of the best states are doing with this.
The other categories that we've highlighted here outside of JTIP in the film business, touch on those a little bit and why it's important that we should know more about these other programs in more detail.
Because they are where the money is. If what's his name, the bank robber, if Willie Sutton was a policy wonk, that's where he would go. That's right. And as Tim mentioned with his crusade for more transparency on tax expenditures, typically tax expenditures dwarf appropriations in economic development, 4 to 1, 6 to 1, 8 to 1. So if you don't have a full map of the bottom of the iceberg, you really don't have your arms around the story. You can't see what's going on. And Richard's absolutely right. Determining the effectiveness of tax breaks is very squishy, and there's lots of dubious research posing as social science out there, alleging cause and effect, which we've published some studies challenging some of the business rankings, business climate rankings based on this. At the end of the day, we know 2 things work for long-term job growth and income growth: investments in education and investments in infrastructure.
I see.
When you create a tax entitlement that automatically applies to everybody performing a certain activity, it's inevitable that most of the companies claiming that credit, it's a windfall for them. You didn't change their behavior. If you create something that occurs automatically with the hope that you incent some new arrivals or you incent some growth that might not have occurred otherwise, it's mostly going to be a windfall. And then the question is, how do you make up the revenue? Because only 2 things can happen when you have less revenue. Either your schools and other public services get worse, or everybody's tax rate has to go up.
And that begs a question on the profile of who's getting these tax breaks, not just here in New Mexico, but nationwide. Talk to that a little bit. That was part of the study that really opened my eyes here.
Well, we actually just published a study called Subsidizing the Corporate 1%, where we identified 965 companies, just 965 companies, that get 75% of all the economic development dollars that have ever been disclosed in U.S. history. So this is the 1% of the 1% practically. It really raises the question, is our economic development system fair to small business, to entrepreneurs, to companies that are less likely to run away and are more interconnected with local economies? And we're now actually plunging into some new research on that. But the big picture looks quite lopsided to us. And we certainly know certain companies like Boeing are known for playing states against each other. But what we didn't know was that some companies like Berkshire Hathaway, right, headed by Warren Buffett, who took this great position on the personal income tax as a remedy to the federal deficit, he's into the public trough for more than $1 billion. It was hidden in more than 300 deals with all the different named subsidiaries of Berkshire Hathaway. But he's a big recipient as well.
Senator, does that fit your sense of who's getting tax breaks in our state, that what Greg's talking about nationally? Do we track the same way here in New Mexico?
Well, for the most part, we do. And I think the challenge is, we're picking winners and losers, which automatically makes people feel a little uncomfortable, especially when we're not sure if the winners are actually going to win in terms of create jobs. But the other issue is, what are we doing for companies and small businesses that are already here? And so when we think about, for example, some of our two most successful programs, the JTIP program.
Could you, by the way, I get so acronym heavy on the show, sorry. Could you explain the acronym and what JTIP is for folks who...
Sure. Well, the original name is the Job Implant Training Program. And it basically, we will reimburse the cost of training someone for 6 months. The state will, in a program. And they're evaluated by the JTIP board, and there's a lot of oversight and accountability in there. And folks really like the program. And it essentially, creates a job when we think about what that means. And it's typically a manufacturing-related job. You have to be producing a good, basically, in one form or another. So the economic principles sort of line up well with that. But when we think about entrepreneurship and growing small business, how many of our programs that we spoke about earlier are available to those folks? And how many are available to out-of-state corporations? It's like this. It's not even close. And so some of our best programs, there's one in the labs as well, where the labs does free consulting work for small businesses. That program also has good transparency and helps small business by definition.
Exactly. Greg Leroy, thank you for coming to Mexico. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Gene.
Richard Anclum, good to see you again. And Senator Tim Keller, thank you for all your work in the legislature on this issue. And everybody keep at it. It's going to be a long, slow slog, isn't it? Like they're saying, it's going to take a long time. Thank you all very much.